Hello and welcome to BYJU'S IAS. Let's get started and look into our daily quiz. Let's look into the first question. Which of the following statements are correct about Mediterranean climate? They are confined to the western portion of continental masses between 30 to 45 degree north and south of the equator. The basic cause of this type of climate is shifting of the wind belts. The Mediterranean lands receive most of their precipitation in summer. Which of the statements are correct with respect to Mediterranean climate? The answer to this is 1 and 2 only. Now let us try and understand what is this Mediterranean climate. As the very name denotes, this particular climatic conditions is seen in and around the Mediterranean Sea. So we have the Mediterranean Sea here. This particular climate is seen in and around it and also on the western part of the continent between those of 30 to 45 degrees centigrade on both sides of the equator. So this can be seen in the northern hemisphere and it can also be seen in the southern hemisphere as well. What is the uniqueness of this Mediterranean type of climate? As we all know, most of the countries in the world and the regions receive their rainfall mostly during the summer season. But an exception to this is the Mediterranean Sea, which receives rainfall and most precipitation during the winter season. Why? That is because of the shifting of the wind belts. In the summer season, the sun is over the northern hemisphere. It has had an apparent movement towards the northern hemisphere. The belt of the influence of the westerlies, which generally bring rainfall to this Mediterranean Sea, is shifted towards the polewards. Since there is shifting of the wind belts, since the rain-bearing winds of the westerlies is shifted towards the polewards, there are no rainfall during the summer season. Instead, what happens? What we have is the trade winds. Since these trade winds flow from the far off regions of Asia, they are the offshore winds. What do? They carry wind from the continental landmass and move towards these countries. As a result, the summers are generally dry, and which is why they do not receive rainfall during the summer season. But what happens during winter season? During the winter season, what we have is the sun, which has had an apparent movement towards the southern hemisphere, and as a result, what we have is the westerlies which move towards the equator. This is where we have the westerlies which take the moisture, collect the moisture from the sea, and ultimately what we have is precipitation during the winter season. So kindly remember, when it comes to the Mediterranean Sea, the summers are dry and most of the precipitation happens during the winter season. Why have we taken this practice question? Because it makes a reference to the Mediterranean Sea. Now let's look into the next practice question. Which of the following countries border Black Sea? Bulgaria, Ukraine, Russia, Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan. The answer to this is 1, 2 and 3 only. When you look into the Black Sea, you have these countries that are surrounding it. One is Russia, second is Georgia, third is Turkey, fourth is Bulgaria, fifth is Romania, and finally what we have is Ukraine. Kindly remember, we have one of the mnemonics to remember which are the countries in and around the Black Sea. So all that you have to remember is your favorite dish, burger. So what does BU stands for? It stands for Bulgaria. What does R stands for? It stands for Russia. What does G stands for? It stands for Georgia. U stands for Ukraine. R stands for Romania, and finally T will be silent in burger, which stands for Turkey. So basically, if you can remember your favorite food, that is burger, you would be able to remember the countries in and around the Black Sea. So we have taken this practice question because of the reference in this article. Now let's look into the next practice question. Consider the following pairs: region in use and the country. Tokero Islands, Philippines; Tigray region, Nigeria; Zoku Valley, Afghanistan. Which of the above pairs are correct? The answer to this is none. Why? Because Tokero Island is not in the region of Philippines, but instead it is in Japan. So the first is out. Tigray region is not in Nigeria, but instead it is in Ethiopia. So the second is wrong. And finally, what we have is Zoku Valley. It is not in Afghanistan, but instead it is in India, where it borders the state of Nagaland and Manipur. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference to the Tigray region. What is the issue in this particular region? Tigray happens to be the northernmost region of Ethiopia, as you can see from this particular picture, and this is home to Tigray people who make up to 6% of the country's population of more than 110 million population. So out of the 110 million population, about 6% is consolidated by the Tigray region. In spite of they being a very small minority, they had consolidated power in this particular country. After long number of years, there was another ethnic group called as Oromia, which currently controls this particular country, and as a result, there is push for this centralization, since there are about 10 regional groupings in this particular country, and most of them have an independent autonomy as well. When there is excessive centralization which is being pushed in this particular country, what this can lead to is skirmishes and tussles between Tigray as well as the central federal government, which is why there is fight that is happening between the Tigray region as well as the central government, and that is what is leading to domestic conflict in this particular region. And as a result, this particular conflict had escalated recently because Tigray held local elections in subordination to the Ethiopian federal government. The federal government did not want local elections to be conducted, but Tigray still went ahead with the elections, and as a result, the federal government considered these elections conducted as illegal in nature, and as a result, there is further friction between the Tigray authorities and the federal government in Ethiopia, which is what is currently happening, which is a kind of a domestic conflict that has been coming up in the country of Ethiopia. So kindly remember, Tigray region happens to be one of the regions in Ethiopia. Now let's look into the next practice question. Consider the following statements about Kabir. Kabir was the famous disciple of Ramananda. He was brought up by a Muslim couple who were weavers by profession. He criticized all forms of worship of idols. Which of the above statements are correct? The answer to this is 1, 2 and 3. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference in the PIB article. So Kabir was the most famous disciple of Ramananda. Yes, this fact is right. He was brought up by a Muslim couple who were weavers of this particular profession, and he also criticized all forms of worship of idols. When it comes to Kabir, Kabir basically had one of the important objects of reconciling the differences between the Hindus and the Muslims. He wanted to establish harmony between both the sects of Hindu and Muslims. He also denounced idolatry and all forms of rituals, and he laid emphasis of equality of human beings before the God. So he emphasized the essential of oneness of all religions, and ultimately said that Ram and Allah are the same, temple and mosque were all the same, and basically he espoused the very values of equality and oneness, and did not believe in different religions, as he thought all religions are the same. Now let's look into the next practice question. With reference to Gram Nyayalaya Act, which of the following statements are correct? As per the Act, Gram Nyayalayas can hear only civil cases and not criminal cases. The Act allows social activists as mediators and reconciliators. Select the correct answer using the code given below. The answer to this is 2 only. What is this Gram Nyayalaya Act? As the very name denotes, it is Gram Nyaya Alaya, which means there would be establishment of the village court at the panchayat level. Who has the power to establish it? This particular power has been given to the state government, and they have been vested with this particular authority. After they consult the High Court, they can go ahead with the establishment of this Gram Nyayalayas. Basically, this is one of the village courts which will be established at the village level by the state governments to hear both the civil cases as well as the criminal cases. So it is not only the civil cases, but they will also hear the criminal cases as well when it comes to Gram Nyayalaya Act. Yes, this particular act also allows social activists so that they can participate in the judicial process. There can be mediators and reconciliators as well, and ultimately what it is supporting is decentralization when it comes to judiciary and participation of the civil activists. That is why the answer to this is 2 only. This happens to be a previous year question from the year 2016. Now let's look into the fact of the day. The fact of the day for today's discussion is Project Seabird. What is this Project Seabird? During the Indo-Pakistan War of 1971, the Indian Navy faced multiple challenges. Why? During those period, what we have is one of the important bases called as Mumbai. Mumbai base was very important on the tourist level, on the commercial level, and also on the security level. This is where there was a lot of congestion during that particular period, and it could have been a security threat to Mumbai during the 1971 war. So what did India do? India was looking at other places along the western coast so that it could establish a new naval base. It looked at multiple places like Tiruvananthapuram, Kannur, and many other places, and finally what it selected is one of the ports in the state of Karnataka called as Karwar. So what is this Project Seabird? Project Seabird happens to be one of the operations where they wanted to ensure that there is construction of a new naval base at Karwar. So this Project Seabird was given permission in the year 1999, and it happens to be the largest naval infrastructure project for India, which involves the creation of naval base at Karwar on the western coast of India. Now the question is, why was Karwar selected? That is because it offers naturally deep water harbor. It also has significant land area for expansion, and at the same time it is at the center, which means it is not close by to Mumbai or at the extreme point of Kerala, but instead it is at the central level when it comes to the coast of India. As a result, Karwar was selected because it was not a security threat, and at the same time it was not at the extremes of the western coast. So kindly remember, this particular plan was laid before, but then ultimately it came into reality only in the year 1999. They did try to come up with this naval infrastructure even in 1991 as well, but we were going through an economic crisis, which is why this particular project was postponed, and finally in the year 1999 this permission was given for the establishment of the Project Seabird. So upon the completion of this particular project, the Indian Navy will have the largest naval base on the western coast, and India will have the largest naval base east of the Suez Canal. The first phase was completed in the year 2005, and the second phase started off in the year 2011. What is the significance of this particular project? It will support several warships and submarines in this particular region, and at the same time, if there has to be any repairs and maintenance facilities for these warships, that can also be undertaken in this particular region. So this happens to be the significant aspects with respect to the Project Seabird. So this is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.